June 6th, 1944, 2:13 a.m., 8,000 feet above the French countryside. Clouds whip past the open door of a rumbling C-47 Skytrain as cold wind howls through the fuselage. Red light bathes the cabin, flickering over the tense faces of young paratroopers gripping the static lines above their heads. Below, the black expanse of Normandy sprawls out, broken only by the occasional flicker of flak bursting far too close. Private First Class Thomas Tex Warren, 101st Airborne Division, adjusts the chin strap of his helmet for the 5th time in as many minutes. His fingers tremble, not from fear, he tells himself, but from the vibration of the aircraft and the freezing air that has already numbed his knuckles. He peers through the small circular window. Tracer fire arcs up from somewhere near Carentan. It's getting closer. Behind him, the crew chief shouts over the drone of the engines. 30 seconds. To les prombrec so with Gozin's 5 side. The red light turns green. The cabin explodes into motion. Men surge toward the door, one after another, as the first trooper vanishes into the dark with a whoosh. Then another. Then another. Tex is up next. And suddenly, the nickname Flying Coffin doesn't seem like a joke anymore. The Douglas C-47 Skytrain was never meant to inspire fear or awe. It wasn't armed, it wasn't fast, and it certainly wasn't armored. To many GIs, it looked like a beefed-up civilian airliner dressed up for war. But on this night, it carried the fate of the largest amphibious invasion in human history on its wings. General Eisenhower had staked everything on the success of the airborne drops. Before a single boot hit Omaha or Utah Beach, over 13,000, paratroopers had to be dropped behind enemy lines to sow chaos, seize roads and bridges, and block German reinforcements. That job, and every life attached to it, hung on the performance of the C-47. Pilots called the mission suicidal. To these Lee of Mencher, they weren't wrong. The Skytrains flew low to avoid radar, sometimes under 500 feet, and slow, making them easy targets for German anti-aircraft fire. Entire formations would disappear in sheets of orange flame over the drop zones. Others were torn apart mid-air, their paratroopers never having the chance to jump. But somehow, the line held. Wave after wave of C-47 seconds kept coming. In the darkness above Normandy, the lumbering Goonie bird became the silent harbinger of Allied fury. German soldiers on the ground recalled the terrifying moment. They realized the sky was filled not with bombers, but with men. Thousands of them, raining from above like ghosts with parachutes. Some aircraft were so riddled with holes they landed hours later leaking fuel, oil, and blood. Mechanics would stare in disbelief at Skytrains with fuselages torn open, elevators missing, rudders shot clean off, and yet still flying. It was then that the nickname changed. What they once called flying coffins, the survivors now whispered about with reverence. Because somehow, against every odd, the C-47 didn't just survive D-Day. It delivered an army. September 17th, 1944. Midday. Somewhere near Eindhoven, the Netherlands. A formation of C-47 Skytrains streaks across the brilliant blue sky, engines growling like 1,000 chainsaws in perfect sync. Below them, the Dutch countryside unfolds in neat squares, farmhouses, hedgerows, canals. But the illusion of peace is a lie. German flak bursts in erratic black blossoms, shaking the aircraft in mid-air. Lieutenant Robert Bobby Hughes, pilot of Mildred Jane, tightens his grip on the control yoke, sweat beads along his brow despite the chill. His co-pilot, Jenkins, is already yelling over the intercom to check engine 2. It's running hot, too hot. But they're not turning back. Behind them, 18 paratroopers of the British 1st Airborne Division brace for the drop. Red berets. Sten guns. Nervous laughter forced through clenched jaws. They'd trained for this moment for weeks. This was Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne assault in history, meant to end the war by Christmas. Allied High Command believed that by capturing a series of key bridges in the Netherlands, they could punch straight into the heart of Germany. And once again, the C-47 was at the center of it all. This time, the stakes were even higher. Over 34000 paratroopers were scheduled to jump over a 3-day window, carried by more than 1,400 C-47 seconds and their glider-towing variants. The mission stretched the limits of logistics, engineering, and courage. But the Germans were waiting. As Hughes C-47 dives to drop altitude, just 600 feet, flak slams into the right wing, shredding a section clean off. The plane lurches violently. Paratroopers shout. Someone vomits. Jenkins curses and punches the overhead panel. Hughes fights the stick. The plane's still flying, but it's like trying to steer a brick in a tornado. He gives the signal anyway. Green light. Go. The jumpmaster kicks the door open with a metal clang, and British paras vanish into the sky one by one. Hughes holds steady as long as he can, longer than he should, until the last man is gone. Then he pulls hard left, climbing just enough to clear the treetops before skimming back toward friendly lines. Smoke pours from the engine. The tail is riddled with holes, but Mildred Jane makes it. Not all C-47 seconds did. Some exploded mid-air. Others crash-landed in fields or forests. One was hit so violently it threw a paratrooper through the fuselage before he ever had a chance to jump. But most of them, somehow, held together. Veterans of Market Garden would later say it wasn't the tanks, the rifles, or the generals that they remembered most. It was the sound of the C-47 seconds overhead, the low, thunderous hum that meant they weren't alone. That meant the sky was on their side. Even German officers, stunned by the scale and audacity of the airborne invasion, recorded in their diaries that the Americans used their transport planes like weapons. It won to see as to ease for relectally overgaze and lislifing firmer relectally ast fighters, because they weren't fast, they weren't armored, but they were relentless, and that made them terrifying. September 20th, 1944. 3 days into Operation Market Garden. Above the besieged town of Arnhem, smoke pillars twist into the grey sky. Anti-aircraft fire churns the air into a storm of metal. British paratroopers are trapped on the ground, outnumbered, outgunned, and desperately low on ammunition. And still, the C-47 seconds come. This time, they're not carrying paratroopers. They're bringing hope, bundles of supplies strapped to parachutes, dropped with surgical precision into kill zones below. Pilots fly lower than ever, sometimes barely 400 feet above rooftops, to avoid missing the drop zones. They are flying blind into gunfire, relying on shaky radio signals and smoke markers. One crew, piloting a Skytrain nicknamed Gravedigger, takes a direct hit to the left wing moments before the drop. Flames erupt near the fuel line. The engineer screams over the headset. The loadmaster ignores it. He's too busy shoving crates of 303 ammunition and medical kits out the open cargo door as the flak thickens around them. "Get it out. Get it all out," he yells, his voice ragged. They complete the drop. The flames are spreading. Instead of bailing out, the pilot banks hard toward a field near the Rhine. With one engine sputtering and the landing gear jammed, Gravedigger hits the ground belly first, skidding to a stop as the cockpit catches fire. The crew survives. They're pulled from the wreckage by Dutch resistance fighters hours later. This scene was repeated again and again. C-47 crews risked everything, not just in delivering troops, but in keeping them alive once they were behind enemy lines, whether it was food, bandages, ammunition, or radios. The Skytrain was the lifeline. But not all of them flew alone. Behind many of these C-47 seconds trailed massive gliders, Waco CG-4, AS and British Horsas, towed into the sky like winged coffins of their own. Inside these gliders were jeeps, anti-tank guns, crates of mortars, even full squads of infantry. The C-47 seconds would tow them over the drop zone and then release, letting the gliders silently swoop down into fields, roads, or, more often, trees and wreckage. Many broke apart on landing, but many made it. One glider pilot, Lieutenant James Browning, later wrote, "I never felt braver than when I saw the tail of the C-47 let go, and we drifted down into hell, because I knew they were up there flying back into it again, for us." Into the where. By late September, Operation Market Garden had stalled. Arnhem was lost. Thousands of Allied troops were killed or captured. But the C-47 crews were never blamed, because they never quit. Some pilots flew 5 combat sorties in 3 days. Others kept flying with damaged instruments, wounded co-pilots, or aircraft stitched together with tape and prayer. Ground crews worked around the clock, patching up Skytrains like battlefield medics, changing engines in muddy fields, hammering out flak holes with rubber mallets. What mattered was getting back in the air. Because the men on the ground were counting on them, the C-47 was no longer just a transport plane. It had become a symbol of something more. March 1945. Somewhere over the Rhine River. The air is thick with clouds and smoke as hundreds of C-47 seconds cross into German airspace once again. Below them, the ground war rages toward its climax. The final Allied push into Nazi Germany is underway, and the airborne are once more at the spear's tip. This time it's Operation Varsity, the largest single-day airborne drop in history. Over 16,000 paratroopers and 1,300 gliders will be deployed behind enemy lines in a single, coordinated thrust to shatter German defences and open the way to the Ruhr. The C-47 seconds, worn and weathered from years of non-stop war, groan as they climb toward altitude. Their fuselages are patched with steel plates, their engines louder than ever, their paint dulled by grime and flak soot, but they are still flying, still reliable, still the most dependable workhorses in the Allied arsenal. Lieutenant Marta Calloway, one of the few female ferry pilots who helped deliver dozens of C-47 seconds to the front, watches from the runway as formation after formation disappears into the horizon. She's delivered planes to North Africa, to Italy, to France, hundreds of missions, but never combat. And yet she knows. Every one of those birds carries more than paratroopers or supplies. They carry momentum. They carry victory. To jullie starp Ziele, te lacht in 5 and well 2000. By war's end, over 1,000 C-47 seconds had been built. They served in every theatre: Europe, North Africa, the Pacific, Burma, China. They dropped soldiers at Normandy, resupplied the resistance in Greece, carried Chinese troops over the Himalayas, and airlifted wounded Marines from Pacific islands that had no runways. One C-47 even carried General MacArthur back to the Philippines. Another served as the platform from which the Japanese surrender was broadcast across the Pacific. To German soldiers, they became a symbol of dread. To Allied troops, they were salvation. To historians, they remain one of the most important aircraft of the 20th century. But perhaps their greatest legacy lives in the words of those who flew them. Crew Chief Harold Reeves, 9th Troop Carrier Command, once said, "You called her a flying coffin. Fine. But I watched her fly home on one engine, missing a tail, bleeding fuel, and still dropping men like angels into fire. You don't disrespect that. You salute it. It's moted people. Today, some of those same C-47 seconds still fly, restored, honoured, paraded through the skies on anniversaries of D-Day, Market Garden, and beyond. Their engines roar across history like echoes of thunder. The name Skytrain may sound humble, but the story it carried shook the world.